After the war, much of the gold that was stolen by the Nazis was found, but there's still millions of dollars of gold missing, and that's the focus of our investigation.
Beneath the dark, icy waters of Austria's Lake Toplitz, a team of scientists made a shocking discovery, one that unraveled a terrifying Nazi secret hidden since World War II.
They continued to take gold until 1945, when the Germans had more or less lost the war.
Long rumored to conceal stolen gold and top-secret documents, the lake gave up something far more disturbing. As divers ventured deeper, what they found wasn't just treasure. It was evidence of a sinister plan the Nazis never intended to be uncovered. Why was it hidden so well? And what terrifying truth does it reveal about Hitler's final moves? You won't believe this chilling revelation. The secrets beneath Lake Toplitz, where the Nazis hid more than gold. Hidden high in the Austrian Alps, surrounded by ancient trees and jagged cliffs, Lake Toplitz doesn't welcome visitors. It dares them. Known by locals as the Devil's Dustbin, this narrow stretch of dark water holds more than just legend. It holds silence. A silence cultivated by fear, protected by time, and thickened by the weight of secrets the Nazis intended never to resurface. As the Third Reich crumbled in the chaotic spring of 1945, defeat wasn't just military, it was existential. Nazi officials didn't simply run, they vanished behind smoke and distraction, scattering their legacy into remote corners of Europe. And one of those corners, perhaps the most mysterious, was Lake Toplitz. While Allied forces pressed in from all sides, a trail of sealed crates, guarded convoys, and hushed whispers snaked through the mountain roads. Some locals later admitted they helped offload the boxes under orders they didn't dare question. Others claimed their grandparents watched silent, grim-eyed SS officers drive into the woods, only to return empty-handed. But this wasn't just a desperate escape. It was a strategic erasure. Documents recovered after the war hinted at final storage sites for the Reich's most valuable assets. Others mentioned black containers to be submerged. No coordinates were offered, only vague references to hidden mountain lakes. Yet all trails seemed to point back to Toplitz. The lake itself is more than just a remote dumping ground. At about 20 meters deep, its chemistry changes. Oxygen vanishes, life disappears. Below that, a dense barrier of rotting tree trunks forms a deadly trap, where diving becomes a gamble with death. Scientists call this zone anoxic, a perfectly preserved layer where anything that sinks is locked in time. Many who have dared to go beyond that wall of timber have not returned. Then came a breakthrough. In 1959, a diving team pulled sealed chests from the lake bed. Inside, millions in fake British pounds, all tied to Operation Bernhard, Hitler's covert plan to sabotage the UK economy. But rather than solving the mystery, the discovery only made it darker. If counterfeit money was hidden so carefully, what else did they bury deeper? Modern sonar and robotic probes have returned to the lake in recent years, peeling back layers of sediment. What they're revealing isn't just debris, metallic structures, unnatural voids, massive unexplained signals below the lake bed. The findings suggest Lake Toplitz hasn't even begun to tell its full story. The more we uncover, the more disturbing the puzzle becomes. So now we have to ask, what more were the Nazis desperate to keep buried? Keep watching to uncover the complete story. The secrets Lake Toplitz tried to bury. As if history itself had begun whispering from the depths. What began as a routine scientific expedition in 2023 quickly turned into one of the most mysterious discoveries of the decade. Deep in the Austrian Alps, where Lake Toplitz stretches cold and silent under a canopy of fir trees, a team of international researchers arrived with a mission that was anything but ordinary. Their goal was simple on the surface: probe the lake's deeper, oxygen-starved waters using cutting-edge autonomous drones. But what they found would crack open a riddle buried since the fall of the Third Reich. With the latest high-frequency sonar and sub-bottom profiling tech at their disposal, scientists finally reached the black zone beneath 20 meters, an area divers had long avoided due to the thick layers of decaying timber and toxic conditions. As the drones slipped through that lifeless silence, the lake's calm exterior gave way to something far more calculated. Metallic signals began to echo through the sonar feeds, faint at first, then growing more frequent, clusters of readings too precise to be random. The lake bed, it seemed, was hiding something deliberately placed. Geometric patterns emerged from the scans, metallic shapes aligned with mathematical precision. When the drones moved closer, they uncovered dozens of crates, some preserved, others rotting, but all sealed shut. Each matched the size and shape of ammunition chests recovered decades earlier in 1959, when forged British currency linked to Operation Bernhard had first been pulled from the lake. That alone would have stirred interest. But this time, the contents were different and far more chilling. One crate held more counterfeit pounds. Another contained tightly packed oblong metal cylinders, wrapped in corrosion-resistant material and heavier than anything their scanners could immediately identify. These weren't just relics. They were puzzles from a war that had supposedly ended 80 years ago. The theory of Nazi gold quickly resurfaced, but some researchers whispered darker possibilities. Rare wartime tech, stolen Allied data, or even biological weapons engineered in secrecy. Then came the most haunting signal of all. At 85 meters below, the sonar mapped a rectangular void buried beneath thick sediment, 12 feet wide, perfectly edged, and lined with what appeared to be metal. It wasn't a rock formation or tree trunk, it was constructed. Geologists on site were unanimous. Nature doesn't make shapes like that, not at those depths. One team member quietly called it the vault, and just like that, whispers of a Nazi endgame resurfaced, not just of stolen wealth, but of a master plan to bury not treasure, but secrets. Security tightened almost overnight. Dives were halted, the footage was sealed. When asked, the team gave only cautious confirmation. Unidentified, historically significant materials had been found. Yet, behind closed doors, the anxiety was real. If these items were planted in the chaotic final days of the Second World War, it implied far more had been concealed than ever admitted. It suggested that as the Reich fell, it chose not to destroy its most dangerous assets, but to hide them where no one would think to look. Requests were quickly submitted to Austrian authorities to lock down the site, citing not just historical interest, but potential hazard. Because what lay beneath Lake Toplitz wasn't just evidence of a past war, it was a time capsule of power, knowledge, and deception, carefully buried beneath the surface and sealed by nature itself. But could something still be active beneath the lake? Something the Nazis built not to hide, but to outlast humanity? Stay tuned, because the deeper we go, the darker this story becomes. The Soviet dive logs. The Cold War didn't just divide nations, it bred a race for secrets. And Lake Toplitz, long suspected of hiding Nazi intelligence, caught the eye of more than just Western powers. In 1975, a quiet Soviet research team arrived under the guise of limnological study, a cover for what would later be revealed as a covert military dive operation. Declassified East German documents, unveiled decades later after the Berlin Wall fell, confirmed that Soviet intelligence had received an alarming tip. Nazi biocontainers were resting at the bottom of Lake Toplitz. The source? An East German informant with ties to former SS officers. A dive log recovered from the Soviet archives marked Toplitz 75 details what happened next. The divers, military operatives trained in deep water extraction, descended beneath the anoxic zone, well past the timber barrier. Their mission: photograph and retrieve any sealed containers marked with symbols indicating scientific contents or biohazard warnings. They found them. The log describes metallic drums clustered in sets of 3, bearing faded hazard markings. One diver, identified only as Unit 17, wrote that the barrels were sweating, seeping a strange oily residue. But the final page of the report is chilling. Entire sections are redacted, except for one handwritten line. "Do not disturb the drums. The silence is deceptive." The mission was abruptly terminated. No samples were recovered, no images released. One diver reportedly fell ill shortly after the dive and died en route back to Moscow. No cause of death was ever recorded in the logs. Why would the Soviets abandon a high-stakes operation after confirming a Nazi-era biocache? Some believe the Soviets feared what they found, that beneath Lake Toplitz wasn't just discarded war junk. It was a vault of untested or failed biochemical weapons, sealed in isolation to protect the world from disaster. Others think the USSR secretly extracted one or more of the barrels for further research, perhaps explaining the sudden shift in Soviet biological weapons advancements during the late 70s. But one thing is certain: the Soviet expedition to Lake Toplitz was never meant to be public. The exact area they surveyed decades ago aligns perfectly with the vault identified in the 2023 scan. If the Soviets had access to that location nearly 60 years ago, what exactly did they discover beneath the silt? Or worse, what might they have deliberately concealed? Lake Toplitz didn't just bury Nazi secrets. It absorbed decades of covert investigations, hushed diplomatic visits, and evidence of something the world still struggles to explain. But what if the real danger wasn't what the Nazis left behind, but what others buried to keep it hidden? From whispers of Soviet cover-ups to vanishing divers, the mystery only deepens. The divers who never came back. Just beyond the quiet forests of Austria lies a lake that doesn't merely reflect the sky, it remembers. Lake Toplitz, tucked away in the Salzkammergut region, appears tranquil at first glance. But for those who have dared to descend into its dark waters, it tells a far more chilling tale. Not one born of legend, but of trained professionals who disappeared without a trace. In 1959, the first official dive teams, composed of naval experts and scientists under discreet Allied surveillance, set out to investigate persistent rumors of hidden Nazi cargo. What began as a routine exploration quickly spiraled into one of post-war Europe's most unsettling unsolved mysteries. Divers returned with wide eyes and trembling voices, if they returned at all. Several never surfaced again. No bodies, no equipment, no bubbles of escape. One diver wrote that descending into Toplitz felt like stepping into the mouth of something alive. There was no natural underwater noise, no crackling, no movement, just a thick, oppressive silence that pressed into the bones like cold iron. Some who went deeper than 20 meters reported sensations of being watched, followed, or even pulled. Their reports became sparse. Then they stopped altogether. Years later, scientists who dared to explore the lake's lower levels discovered something extraordinary. Nazi documents, preserved perfectly in waterproof crates. The ink hadn't faded. The pages remained crisp. The lake, starved of oxygen below a certain depth, had become a time capsule, but one that held its secrets close and punished those who sought to uncover them. More troubling were the diver logs recovered from earlier missions, stretching from the 1960s to the early 80s. 3 separate entries, all written by different men years apart, carried the same final line. We reached the second tier, heard what sounded like chain scraping, probably just gear. Proceeding anyway, none of them were seen again. Psychologists waved it off as nitrogen narcosis, but others saw a pattern too eerie to dismiss. How could multiple individuals hallucinate the same sound in the same spot, decades apart? Then came the whispers, stories from local villagers about men who tried to speak about what lay beneath and mysteriously died within days. In one tale, a former Nazi officer allegedly confessed to hiding something beyond gold in the lake. Days later, he was dead, his files missing. No official cause, no autopsy, just vanished truths. Environmental concerns only deepened the dread. In 1982, barrels were spotted leaking from the lake bed. The scientist who reported them lost his data to government agents, and the area was sealed under the guise of contamination control. The Austrian parliament debated whether the lake was a historical archive or a biological hazard. If those barrels contain not just Nazi treasure, but failed chemical weapons or biological agents, then any attempt to retrieve them risks more than lives. It could unleash catastrophe. Even today, modern exploration tools don't fare much better. Remotely operated vehicles have lost contact near the same locations where human divers disappeared. Some blame sonar confusion, others suggest magnetic anomalies, but a growing number believe it's intentional, like the lake knows and responds. Whatever lies at the bottom of Lake Toplitz, it has never been about treasure alone. It's about silence, about the lives swallowed whole, about something below that doesn't just wait, but watches. And every time a diver disappears, the lake doesn't just gain another secret. It whispers a warning. Some things are meant to stay buried. The Lake Toplitz vault. Just when the weight of history seemed settled in silence, a chilling discovery beneath Lake Toplitz shattered the calm. In 2023, a sonar scan revealed something impossible to ignore. A void, perfectly rectangular, unnervingly precise, and buried deep beneath layers of sediment in the Austrian lake. Measuring over 12 feet across and suspiciously symmetrical, it immediately ignited whispers among scientists and intelligence agencies alike. They called it the vault, not a natural formation, but something far more deliberate. The image alone defied nature. Mountains and lakes don't form straight lines by chance. The sharp edges and clean corners hinted at human design. Intentional, mechanical, and disturbingly intact after decades. Skeptics tried to dismiss it as a sonar illusion or an odd play of sediment, but core samples surrounding the anomaly told a different story, a clear disruption layer dating back to the early 1940s, aligning precisely with the height of Nazi activity in the region. Something heavy and unnatural had been submerged, and nature had been carefully encouraged to cover its tracks. What pushed this from curiosity to obsession wasn't just the vault itself, but what sat above it. Scattered in eerie uniformity across the lake bed was a tangled maze of tree trunks, roots, and shattered metal debris, forming a kind of underwater camouflage. Engineers examining the sonar footage proposed something that froze the blood of even seasoned researchers. The debris wasn't accidental. It had been deliberately arranged, a trap to confuse sonar, to injure divers, and to dissuade anyone from getting close. This wasn't just a burial, it was a warning. Several eyewitness accounts, long dismissed as folklore, suddenly regained traction. Locals recalled shadowy convoys near the lake in 1944, unmarked crates, heavily armed SS officers, and strange nocturnal activity. At the time, such tales were brushed off as wartime paranoia. But now, as sonar and sediment began to validate the legends, those old stories gained disturbing relevance. Theories exploded. Some clung to the familiar, gold. Nazi Germany had looted over $550 million worth of it during the Second World War, much of it still missing. Lake Toplitz, isolated, frigid, and treacherously deep, would have made a perfect vault for that final hoard. But others believed the stakes were far higher than treasure. Historians speculated the vault could contain classified SS documents, sensitive blueprints, or even film reels capturing backroom deals and unspeakable experiments. Blackmail material, codes for secret bank accounts, or correspondences that could unravel modern political legacies. Every scrap of paper sealed inside, if real, had the potential to shake the foundation of post-war history. But then came the theory no one wanted to voice. The vault wasn't made just to store something, it was built to trap it. One declassified OSS document from 1952 made an oblique reference to biological hazards stored in lakeside cache zones, suggesting materials so dangerous they had to be hidden from the world indefinitely. Could this site contain failed biochemical weapons, radioactive materials, the remnants of experiments too horrific to let surface again? If so, Lake Toplitz is not a time capsule. It's a sealed coffin. And someone, long ago, did everything in their power to keep it closed. The Austrian government, sensing the gravity of what might lie below, clamped down. Dive permits were suspended. Excavation plans stalled. The lake was quietly labeled an environmental protection zone. But the timing and secrecy suggest a deeper reason: fear. Not of what's been found, but of what still slumbers. Because beneath the rippling water, hidden behind layers of ice-cold secrecy and natural decay, lies something that was never meant to be unearthed. Not all secrets are buried in haste. Some are entombed with precision, shrouded in timber, masked by silt, and left behind like a whispered threat. And now, as technology inches closer to unlocking the depths, the world must ask itself one question. Was the vault meant to protect history, or protect us from it? Stay with us. The full truth is about to surface. The disappearance of a filmmaker. Back in the 1980s, a rumor began to circulate in conspiracy circles, quiet, eerie, and never fully verified. It's said that a documentary filmmaker became obsessed with Lake Toplitz. According to whispers online and among local historians, this person spent months interviewing retired soldiers, aging villagers, and even rumored SS collaborators, trying to uncover what was really hidden beneath the water. His project, as the story goes, was titled The Black Depths. It was never completed. Unofficial accounts claim he uncovered shocking statements during his interviews, fragments of a larger secret. One particularly unsettling clip allegedly featured a frail elderly man with trembling hands, identified only as a former transport officer during the war. When asked what had been dumped into the lake, he supposedly leaned forward and whispered, "The lake remembers. We left something that thinks." That footage has never been verified. What's even stranger is how the filmmaker, who remains unnamed in all versions of the story, vanished before the documentary could be finished. Not just him, but everything related to the project. His notes, his footage, his backup tapes, gone. Some say the editing studio where he worked was mysteriously emptied. No sign of a break-in, but entire shelves wiped clean. Others claim fragments of his work survived, leaked anonymously years later by someone who once worked with him. One of the surviving clips reportedly shows a calm view of Lake Toplitz at dusk, with the camera focused on the still water. But in the background, barely audible, is a low mechanical hum, like gears turning or metal shifting. The sound came from the lake itself. Of course, there's no official confirmation that any of this happened. No arrest, no missing person case tied to it. And no studio has ever acknowledged working on a film by that name. Skeptics chalk it up to an urban legend, a spooky tale meant to keep the lake's mystery alive. But others ask the harder question: if it was just a documentary, why did it disappear? And more importantly, why did its creator vanish with it? Could the lake be hiding more than treasure, could it erase those who get too close? Stay tuned. What happens next isn't just seen, it's heard. The unheard frequencies. For years, Lake Toplitz has resisted exploration, not just physically, but technologically. Strange malfunctions, unexplained equipment failures, and drone shutdowns have long been dismissed as flukes. But in 2019, one scientific expedition tried something different. They didn't bring metal detectors or sonar arrays. They brought microphones. A team of European acoustic researchers was curious. Could the lake itself be making noise? What they found left them stunned and silent. Using submerged hydrophones, they detected ultra-low frequency pulses from the deepest regions of the lake. These weren't echoes, seismic rumbles, or natural tremors. The signals were deliberate, rhythmic, patterned. Some researchers described the sounds as similar to coded bursts, spaced too perfectly to be random. One technician even compared the intervals to primitive Morse code, a language trying to speak, but from where? Attempts to decode the pulses failed. And then, things got weirder. Every time the frequency patterns appeared, nearby drones began to malfunction. Cameras flickered. Batteries drained faster than normal. Some equipment logged strange reroutes, as if something interfered with their programmed path. The official explanation? Sediment density confusion and environmental distortion. But off the record, one researcher called the pulses alive. Skeptics laughed it off, but archived Soviet documents, long buried in Cold War files, revealed something chilling. In 1975, a Soviet team recorded what they called harmonic resonance anomalies near Toplitz. Their divers reported dizziness, nausea, and confusion, symptoms often associated with low-frequency exposure. So what's happening here? Could it be an old Nazi surveillance system still running in silence? A form of experimental technology never meant to be discovered that still breathes through the lake's depths? Or is it something else entirely? A byproduct of whatever is hidden inside the vault? But if the lake is still pulsing, still warning, then maybe it isn't isolated at all. The tunnel theory. For decades, explorers have viewed Lake Toplitz as the final resting place of Nazi secrets. But what if it's not the final stop at all? What if it's just the entrance? In recent years, a new theory has quietly gained traction among underground researchers and fringe geologists, that Lake Toplitz is connected to a much larger hidden network, a tunnel system carved deep into the Alps, possibly by the Nazis themselves. It's no secret that the Third Reich engineered vast underground bunkers, escape routes, and concealed storage sites throughout Europe. Places like the Berghof, Eagle's Nest, and the Redl project prove they had both the ambition and the technology to build beneath the earth. But rumors suggest Toplitz was different. Recently reanalyzed geological surveys from the 1960s indicate subterranean anomalies beneath the lake. Long, narrow gaps in the bedrock that resemble access tunnels, not natural caves. Though these readings were once dismissed, newer seismic scans conducted in 2021 appear to confirm their existence. What's more disturbing is where they may lead. Some theorists believe these tunnels connect Toplitz to other Nazi strongholds scattered across the Austrian Alps. Hidden bunkers, forgotten labs, even rumored railway lines. Entire infrastructures that were sealed off before the Allies ever arrived. One anonymous former Austrian geologist who worked on classified military contracts in the 1980s claims he was shown preliminary blueprints for a multi-tiered vault system beneath the lake. He recalls one specific word written across the schematic in bold red ink: verboten, forbidden. Could this mean the vault found on sonar is just the surface layer of something far deeper? There's also speculation that the tunnel system wasn't just for storage or escape. It may have been built to isolate something dangerous, a way to lock it inside the mountain, with the lake as its lid. Skeptics argue there's no hard proof, but then again, if the tunnels do exist, they were designed to stay hidden. And if they connect multiple secret sites, Lake Toplitz may not just be a mystery. It may be central to something much larger, the find that no one wants to confirm. If the tunnels beneath Lake Toplitz truly exist, then perhaps they weren't built to connect. It's possible they were designed to isolate. That's the unsettling thought that quietly gained traction after a privately funded expedition slipped into the lake in early 2020. Unlike the headline-chasing missions of the past, this team didn't seek attention. No cameras, no press releases, just drones, sonar rigs, and a disturbing kind of silence that stretched from the surface of the lake to the faces of the people involved. The expedition itself was meant to be routine, at least on paper. Mapping, imaging, recording. But something changed almost immediately after the mission ended. Permits for further dives were suddenly suspended. Environmental restrictions were ramped up without explanation. Local officials, once cooperative and even proud to share their region's infamous mystery, became evasive. Some began refusing interviews. Others denied the mission had ever occurred. That's when the leaks started. Not officially, of course, but fragments began appearing quietly on obscure forums, encrypted archives, and YouTube channels that vanished almost as quickly as they appeared. One clip showed an underwater drone slowly hovering over a metallic object, partially buried in silt, its edges far too smooth to be natural. In another, grainy sonar footage revealed what appeared to be a perfectly rectangular chamber, a few meters beneath the lake bed, eerily similar to the vault reported in previous expeditions. But this time, there was no confirmation, no scientific paper, no media buzz, just silence. Some believe that's no accident. An unnamed researcher, who claimed to have been part of the 2020 team, spoke anonymously in an audio interview shared on a private subreddit. "What we saw wasn't what we expected," he said, voice distorted, "and we weren't prepared to understand it. It didn't just raise questions, it made us question whether we should be asking them at all." Since then, the lake has quietly slipped behind a bureaucratic curtain. Permits are harder to acquire. Equipment is more regulated. Any deep drilling or drone activity must now pass through several layers of federal clearance. Officials cite environmental concerns, but others suspect a quiet containment effort. Because maybe it's not about what's hidden down there, maybe it's about what might happen if it's disturbed. Theories have swirled, some rational, some chilling. Was it gold? A cache of biological agents? Or just a decoy, engineered to mislead anyone who got too close? Some speculate it wasn't treasure at all, that it was a warning, engineered by the retreating Nazi elite to outlive them. A legacy not of riches, but of fear. And yet, the fascination doesn't fade. Perhaps it's the silence, the lack of closure that keeps the mystery alive. Or maybe it's because, deep down, we suspect that something truly was found in 2020. Something real. Something unsettling enough that even those who found it aren't sure if it should ever come to the surface. It's no longer just about discovery. It's about hesitation, about restraint, because we're not asking, "Did they find it?" anymore. That question feels outdated. Now we're asking something far more uncomfortable. Should we keep looking? And maybe the most terrifying answer is no. Whatever was uncovered beneath Lake Toplitz that year didn't lead to headlines or answers. It led to hesitation, locked records, and quiet deflections. Not because the technology failed, but because maybe, just maybe, it succeeded too well. So here we are. The lake remains off-limits. The rumors are louder than ever. The shadows beneath it are longer than they've ever been. But one thing is becoming more clear with every sonar ping and every whisper from behind closed doors. Lake Toplitz wasn't just hiding something, it still is. A treasure or a time bomb? For all the sonar scans, drone dives, and whispered testimonies, the truth about Lake Toplitz remains suspended just beneath the surface, untouched, unanswered, and unsettling. Decades of rumors pointed to Nazi gold, a fortune said to have been dumped into the depths as the Third Reich collapsed. And yet, despite glimpses of metallic crates, sealed containers, and that now infamous vault-shaped void, no official confirmation has ever been released. Maybe that's by design. Some believe what lies beneath the lake is too dangerous to recover, whether it's gold wrapped in deception or something far worse. Failed experiments, volatile chemicals, or even engineered silence meant to outlast the war that created it. Lake Toplitz doesn't just hold secrets, it protects them. Whether out of natural danger or human intent, it remains one of the most heavily guarded mysteries in modern history. Not by fences or soldiers, but by fear, confusion, and the haunting possibility that some discoveries are better left submerged. So we're left with questions, not answers. Was it treasure? A trap? A final message from a regime that refused to die quietly? Whatever the truth may be, Lake Toplitz still hasn't let it go. So, what do you think? Did the Nazis hide treasure beneath Lake Toplitz? Or something far more dangerous that was never meant to be found? We'd like to hear your theories. Don't forget to like and subscribe.